Yes. Yes, so we are recording the webinar right now. And now I would like to live stream on Facebook so that we don't forget about it. So here we are. Welcome, everyone. If you would like to say hello, hello to Maria, you are more than welcome. In the meantime, I will just activate recording, activate live streaming on Facebook. I am in the process. Oops. Okay. So, okay. Oh, there is a very young participant.
Indeed, we can hear a baby. It's important to keep your yes, your microphone. Hello, everyone. And I see we have a participant from Mexico. Hi, hello. Anything outside Europe is always fascinating because it shows how we have torn down all the time and distance and all the things that kept us apart. A warm hello to Poland, a warm hello to Samos.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
And a big thanks to IATEFL Poland for this invitation, and of course to all the people in Greece who have decided to join. It's quite late in Greece, but I mean, we usually have wine at this time, not
I know.
webinars. But
I
then
know
again,
that's why I really appreciate you agreeing to have these webinars for us.
as I said, anything for IATEFL Poland. My heart resides in Krakow, and you know how much your friendship means so much to me. You know that.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I have some problem with logging into Facebook, so we will start the webinar. I would like to welcome, because it's 1 minute past the beginning time, and in the meantime I will be working on this Facebook live streaming. I assume that maybe Marcin wanted to fix something and now there is some kind of problem, so I will activate live streaming in a moment. But in the meantime, I would like to welcome everybody to this wonderful webinar. And I would like to say at the beginning, before we start, I would like to say that Maria is our #1 on IATEFL Poland webinar list. The history goes back to 2017 by 2018, when Maria offered to IATEFL Poland the first webinar. The subject of this webinar was teacher development for teachers at different stages of their professional careers. And it was offered in her own room. Yes, so input on education. And the same happened in 2018 by 2019. Then later on, we had the Click platform, and we invited Maria to have her webinars on the Click platform. So she is a pioneer of webinar series for IATEFL Poland, and I'm really grateful to Maria. So if you would like to watch some of the previous webinars by Maria, just go to one of the links that I am going to offer to you in a moment. I will offer you some useful links, and you will be able to find the webinars recorded. So there is, simply speaking, on IATEFL Poland Twitter, and then live streaming on IATEFL Poland Facebook. As most of you probably know, Maria is not only a practicing teacher, but she is a lecturer in English Studies Department of City College in the Europe campus of the University of York. I don't know what you have been doing in the meantime, Maria, but
nothing much. I mean, nothing other, you know, out of the ordinary. I have to admit, I haven't been studying Polish as I used to. Quite a few more projects have piled up, and my own private study has gone back, but I'll make up for it.
Okay. But you are doing great. And very important aspect of Maria's activity is that the fact that she is managing director of Input on Education. That's your idea, Maria, and this is a company that provides academic and business support services for foreign language schools. And I really am impressed with this area of your activity. Of course, Maria presents at conferences and writes articles related to her special research interests, and that's where we met at IATEFL Poland conference. And her materials refer to teaching, learning, digital teaching, and all the whole variety of aspects related to teaching. She has been also involved with the running of TESOL Macedonia phrase, Northern Greece, and of course, in IATEFL World, yes, she offers to us some webinars, and she moderates these webinars. So a very busy person, Maria, over to you. Today,
Fine.
you will help us. You will help us start a new school academic year on the right foot. So let's start it on the right foot. Today is the first day of school in Poland. So that is perfect timing for you. Thank you.
Powodzenia. Dziękuję bardzo. Now, the overview of this webinar is actually very simple. First, we're going to start with a SWOT analysis to see what these first days can offer us, why they are challenging, and why they might be draining. Now, whenever we speak about anything challenging, we always focus on the learners, and we forget our own well-being. We have 100 things running at the same time, and those first days require a lot more planning than other days. Plus, we are not used to working at the same pace because we are fresh after our holidays. So we'll see the challenges and the opportunities there. We are going to discuss two major issues which we experience when we work with new classes. Now, I'm fortunate because in my environment, I've been teaching in the same foreign language school for a number of years. I think, I'm afraid to say, I must be reaching 16 in the same school. And I teach exam classes mainly. So I have the strategy class of the B2 level. Then I take on these students as C1 students and take them on to take the proficiency exam, a variety of proficiency exams. So more or less, I know who I will be teaching. So right now, I don't know my C1 students as day-to-day performance, but I am not unfamiliar with who they are. Still, unpredictability, student unwillingness, very important areas. We're going to look into integrating skills. When I was a student, when I was a primary school student, my mom used to take out my grammar books and my math books. And after my name day on the 15th of August, she would say, now, let's stop laughing and let's start revising, because that's what you need to do. Revise your grammar and your math for school. And it was supposed to be the it thing to do for teachers and for parents, revise grammar. Is it still the it thing to do? Why not? Then we're going to look at two different types of activities. The first type has to do with activities that you can use during the school year, during the first days, with those grammatical structures. I call them activities up your sleeve. Why? Because they require very little preparation. If you find a gap in your lesson plan, you can pull them, from this magic hat and do them. The other part has to do with working with flashcards, always a useful activity when we have young learners. And the last one, recycling material from the previous year, which is necessary because students may have some leftover pages in their books, or perhaps we recycled some material as summer work. It's very important for this not to be wasted. So here we go. Let's get started. Now, any ideas about why the first days are challenging? We cannot communicate, I suppose, but it would be a good idea if we could have, Lucina, I'm not wrong to think that people can activate their microphones. They can. Okay, of course.
Wait a minute. Of course they can. I just was muted a moment ago, but everybody can activate
So
their microphone on their
it-
own. No
it would
problem.
be excellent. Thank you. It would be much better than using the chat because I have to move out of the
Mhm.
environment. So what is so challenging about the first days? Any ideas based on your experience? Of course, chat is fine as well. Yes, Vaso, hello. Everybody's in a summer mood. Everybody is, as we say in Greek, they are flying a kite. They are not really interested in what we are talking. It's still hot, especially in our country. It's hot. They feel that the holidays are still there. And if they are not, remembering the summer, they're sad because summer is over. Anything else? Let's become one big group. If you have any ideas, I can see a lot of familiar faces and we have some answers. When students go to a new school, they meet a lot of new people at once. Great. Yes, Paulina, that's so true. They become nervous. They clam up. They are shy. Students often don't know each other. They don't know the teachers. Thank you, Isa. They are more interested on talking about their summer vacation than in their class. I hope they're interested in talking because sometimes they don't even want to do that. I mean, it doesn't matter what we do, everything is boring. Yes, sometimes thank you, Isa, that's so important. That could be done because somebody changed groups and now they are in a more advanced group and everybody is blah, 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 speaking fast and they are a bit ashamed of their level of English or they're facing language barriers. Very good ideas. Yes. Thank you. Okay, that was a great start. Let's see. So we have one more answer. I think they have previous bad experiences. Yes, that's true. So one of the things that teachers may encounter, I remember the last job I ever took on was my position at City College. It seems laughable now, but I had been given so many instructions, how to switch on my equipment, where to find the key, where to find my register. And I kept thinking, if only my friend would be there on the same day because she had greater experience. She had been teaching there for some years. And right now, I find that all this was, nothing but the unfamiliarity of the environment and also the human resources. Who do I call if this happens? Who do I turn to if there is no internet, if something doesn't work in my classroom? And this is the teacher's fear, but it can happen and it can reflect on the learners, especially the young ones. They can sniff the fear on us. The next thing is that students, groups that we know may have shifted. So one student has been moved, another has been added, one has left. So we may have a group that used to be a slow one, and now somehow they are picking up. But is our lesson plan aligned with this new reality? Or perhaps we were planning for a class that used to be boom, boom, dynamic, and now we have a class that is facing issues. How about that? Is our lesson plan aligned? Perhaps we need new material for our learners, and we have no idea how to calibrate this material. We might need to see what we don't have. For example, if I decide to use pages 10 and 12 from the workbook, or let me find another set of numbers, 112, 113 from the workbook, which are an additional part with, let's say, a video and some worksheets that we didn't use last year. If I take into consideration only my own learners, it's okay, they have the book. Do they all still have the book? Have I told them to bring it? Have they kept the book at pristine condition, or have they started tearing up pages? And do they all have the book, or do I have to make photocopies? And how many students actually have this book? Because if only 2 students out of the 6 have the book, then obviously it's not worth trying. We've already pointed out that unwillingness to leave summer behind is the greatest issue. And to be honest, I see that in parents as well. They are secretly mourning the summer that is gone, but they get angry at their children who are also in the same situation, where all we need is a hug. I mean, obviously, we are all, just a little bit of summer. I cannot ask the question in Polish, but I remember the answer. How much sleeping time is the optimal one? Jeszcze 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes more. So this is what we need, just 5 days more summer. And this brings them also in a confrontation with their parents, because now that we are calling parents to remind them of the school starting day, parents say, have you prepared your homework? Miss Maria gave you a folder. Did you do this? And of course, most of them go like, yeah, I'll do it over the weekend. And then mother starts shouting, and we start the school year on the wrong foot. So this is my SWOT analysis. You will notice that I didn't use gradual revelation because in the table, it didn't work. So what I've noticed, one of the greatest strengths of those first lessons is that I can work on any sort of material I like. Now, obviously, this has to be agreed with the school, but I enjoy great liberty with both my employers. I mean, as long as it's in alignment with the syllabus, I can use material from the internet, citing my sources, and I can use material from YouTube as long as it's not anything offensive and it follows the regulations for regarding the age of the learners. It's a good thing that students can have a clean slate. There is no past, there is no homework. I won't make a big thing if they haven't done their folder. For example, when we stopped our lessons in May, I gave my Prof 1 students who were moving on to Prof 2, let's say a diet, a plan for their summer based on the material that was left in their book. When we were ready to announce the program, what we call the comeback week, the bridging between the previous year and the new year, I redrafted this homework and told them, out of all these things I gave you, in the first lesson, we're going to work with this and this and this. I made it a bit less stressful. And to be honest, I am grateful for what they did. I won't stand and start criticizing what they didn't do. So in this case, I am in to praise the work produced, not to criticize what was not produced. These first days provide me with a great opportunity to meet learners, get the learners to meet each other, see the level that I'm dealing with, find out difficulties. I'll give you an example. There are some groups in which just nobody is willing to speak. It doesn't have anything to do with the level of the learners. They're good students. If you give them a test, if I gave them a diagnostic test, they would score top scores. I want you to speak. I want you to put this lovely puppy that is called English language to the test, but not write a test, speak, read, interact. And I see hesitation. Where does this hesitation stem from? If I don't know the learners, I have to find out this root. Is it because they were being taught in a different way? As I said before, is this a new diet for the learners? An example, the previous teacher from a previous school, previous level, private lessons, taught them in Greek. If I speak English, 75 minutes out of the 90, some students may go like, what? Too much information, too much going on. And also, these days allow me to set the tone for the entire year. What does that mean for me? I don't want my learners to think that the whole year is going to be just, fun and games. It's going to be a video, but the video requires active listening. The video requires finding out certain information and then discussing this with your friends, and then discussing these with your with another group so that you can produce a report. Therefore, everything is integrated, and this is very important. What about the difficulties that we might come up against, the weaknesses? There is just too much material. I started my career teaching very young learners. In fact, I spent something like the 13 first years of my career teaching pre-juniors. It's been an enriching experience, but I remember the dreadful panic I felt every time I had to start a pre-junior group. You have to wow them, you have to uplift them, and there are 1,000 books and all these activities. Plus, I used to teach these classes before 2004. So imagine, there was no internet, no Canva, no YouTube. So imagine what it is like now. So much material, and also indications of activities, indications of materials we can use. But perhaps the glue is missing. Perhaps we need a bit of inspiration to guide us, a bit of inspiration to show us the path so that our lesson has thread and there is some glue that holds this edifice together. Once again, the learners are still thinking of summer and the lost summer. And there is a lot of unpredictability. Unpredictability might have to do with very practical things. For example, I was planning to play a game and I was planning to stick things on the walls of the classroom. And then on the day, I found out that this is not allowed in the school. Or I was planning to ask the students to use their phones to surf the internet and look for answers. And I found out that we don't share the Wi-Fi code, or it's not allowed for students to use mobile phones. Keep these in, because these are important things we'll talk about at the end, how we can limit unpredictability. The threat, time. It's not the best thing to plan a wow lesson that was meant for 45 minutes, actually have too much material that doesn't culminate, and then the students leave, but this material has somehow been chopped at an unnatural point. Or if the class spills into the next one, or matched with unpredictability, some students had the wrong information. You know what it's like. Students usually forget the time that the lesson starts, their parents are late, so on and so forth. The levels of noise that the class may generate, and also the comments that might be made by learners and then by parents. You may see that at this point, I have taken into consideration a situation in which the teacher hasn't taught in that school before. That often happens. It's the first day for the teacher as well. So this means that it's always good, no matter if the school provides it. If I had a school, that would be provided. The DOS or the owner would go through lesson plans with the teachers, suggesting ideas, saying, yes, that's a good idea. This, yes, as a backup plan, but don't overload your lesson plan. It's always a good idea to have a second eye, mainly to make sure that everything is kept up at the same pace, and classes don't do things which are too different. Personally, as a manager, I suggest that teachers have a brainstorming session. So all pre-junior teachers, all junior teachers, all senior teachers, they have a brainstorming session and they can decide what they want to do. Anything you would like to discuss at this point? Any questions that you may have? So that I can drink water. I don't see any comments. So let's move on to how we can deal with unpredictability. So the first thing is to spend the first part of this class taking notes. It doesn't matter. I mean, even the simplest thing, students do not know how pair work works. So we set up pair work, we give instructions, we show people what they have to do, we ask them to repeat the instructions, then off they go, they work on their own, we monitor, and then time is up, everybody puts their hand up and we say, okay, start with these people, listen, and we notice that one group is still going on and they're chatting, and we say, guys, time is up, listen to your colleagues. and nobody listened. They're still chatting. So in this case, we can see that a new diet for learners. First of all, we have to start with the assumption that they are not familiar with this way of working. So we ask, and we always give instructions so that everybody understands what they have to do. And this is a good start because we avoid feeling, that people do not respect us, or sometimes it's not lack of respect. They simply don't know. They haven't done that in the past. I mean, once I was monitoring and taking notes, and the group stopped talking and they just smiled at me. And I said, keep talking. No. And they were shy, but I have to listen to what they are saying. It's a good idea to plan for a level that's slightly below. So unless we are told that we have been given the super C1 class, it's always good to plan for a lesson that's, let's say, average B2, not exceptional B2. There might be exceptional students, but we don't want to have students who are daunted by the task. Also, these are the first days. We don't want to start making the students feel that there is too much they don't know, too much that they have to cover up, to make up for. And of course, let's not forget, this may backfire. They may go home, they may complain, they may say, I know nothing, this is too hard for me, I did nothing last year. And if last year was in the same school, it may trigger a whole difficult issue that we do not want to have. One of the things that I have decided to do, and I do, is to carry all my own supplies. I have everything in my bag. A pair of scissors, some post-its, staples, all the things that I might need for crafts, even colored papers, cardboards. Now, if this is a school where I have my own station and I can have my stuff there, I will create my stock for the entire year. If not, I will put them in a folder in my bag. I will have a special purse in my bag where I have everything, and there's no chance my activity will not be done because we needed, let's say, blue tack, and there was no blue tack available. Before I do this, I will check with the secretary to see if it is allowed and where it is allowed. Also, in some classrooms, in some schools, you can leave things on the walls of the classroom. For example, this is more than encouraged in the secondary private language school where I work. It is not so encouraged at university, obviously, because it's a university. So we can leave them, but we have to make a special arrangement. I always try to include a little bit of technology. I must admit, though, that my technology is teacher-led. I haven't moved so far ahead with the time as to tell students, bring out your phones, do this, do that. Why? If I have a small group of students and we are alone in the school and it's the end of the working day and everybody else has left, then I can use the Wi-Fi. If it's one of the busiest times and we are on the Wi-Fi, it might slow down the reception. This means that my activity is slowing down. I'm also slowing down the secretary. So unless I can find a way to have a reliable Wi-Fi connection, I will not risk not doing something because we are slowed down by this. I might provide, instead of having the students scan a QR code that leads them to an announcement, to an interesting post on Instagram, I might have a screenshot of the Instagram post. I might have both, and if the first option doesn't work, I will work with the second. This is very important because I don't want to feel that my learners will leave thinking, what had she planned? What was that like? Why didn't we do it? Now, one of the things that we've already mentioned is that students are not ready to leave behind the nice, lazy atmosphere of the summer. So one of the things that I enjoy doing is a pleasant surprise. So last year, as my Prof 2 students came in, I told them, wash your hands. And they thought I was doing this because of COVID measures. And some of them just poured more liquid, you know, the disinfectant liquid. And I said, no, wash your hands because we're going to eat. They looked at me. I mean, we always eat at our school, but they looked at me suspiciously. And when they came in, there was a plate of donuts for all of them, an individual plate of donuts so that they wouldn't share, so that we could start. Greek donuts are covered with honey and lovely dried nuts and everything. Yes, I know. I can see Lucina thinking of how tasty. It's yummy. So it was a great surprise, and the students were so happy because they got something they didn't expect. I know that there was a time when it was part of the, let's say, let's get to know us situation, to give students tests. Personally, I find that it starts the school year on the wrong foot. It's anticlimactic, and it also puts forward the message that I care about grammar and about translation and about scores and about tests. If I use integrated skills in my class, I can see how much the learners know about working in a class where the language of communication is L2. I can see their fluency levels, their hesitation, and if there aren't that many learners in my class, I can even have quite enlightening notes. And if the DOS needs these notes, I can even provide examples. I can see that everybody agrees that we don't like tests on the same day. I know that some schools still consider it a rule. Personally, I feel that if the students have to take a test, they can do it before, and these days they can do it digitally as well. Now, if we have to use a test, let's say that the worst thing happens and the test is a must because it's on some sort of document that school gives out. We can discuss with the DOS if we can use the test creatively. So, for example, the students can do the test, and then once they have done it, we can take it away because we need their scores, but we can put it up on the interactive whiteboard software and then get them to discuss the answers they have given in groups. This will help them understand and learn from each other. And perhaps they can leave notes or comments, you know, like, I thought that the correct answer in question 5 was A, but Martina suggested it was C, and we disagree in so and so because so and so. This shows a rationale. We need the learners to have some sort of rationale when going through multiple choice tasks. The other thing we can do is get the students to correct their tests in groups. So we can give them the key. They can correct the test, somebody else's test perhaps, and then we can discuss the answers, but we ask them to say why the wrong answers are wrong. This can happen in a variety of ways. For example, I can show the corrected version of the test on the whiteboard software. They can tick, tick, tick the correct answers, and then we can decide what we want, why the wrong answers are wrong. The last thing, we can, in a way, work with expansion tasks. For example, if, let's say that one of the questions, usually those tests have a lot of, they rely heavily on tenses. So keywords get often already, let's say that the students had particular trouble figuring out the difference between yet and already, for and since, or forever and continuous tenses to show irritation. We make notes and then we ask the students to produce their own examples. They can do that in groups. I am a firm believer in examples. We use examples a lot in class. They are easy to produce and they highlight the difficulties that students may have in using a certain lexical item or even a word that has mainly grammatical use like adverbs of frequency or conjunction. The last thing that we can do is to work on an integrated skills lesson, which is my favorite one. And I find this a lot more creative. Now, you may ask, how would the integrated skills lesson lead the teacher to understand the student's ability to use tenses? It depends on what we want the supposed test to focus on. If we need to report back to head office about the strengths of the students regarding so-and-so, we can design an integrated lesson that reflects that. Anything you would like to discuss, anything you would like to talk about? Okay, moving on. What are integrated lessons? These are lessons that they are not grammar lessons. They are not reading lessons or listening lessons. They are actually lessons that revolve around a topic. And this makes them all the more meaningful and all the more into the language. They will bring up or teach or practice grammar or vocabulary, but these are taught incidentally. And because they are taught incidentally, and because the meaning of grammar and vocabulary is highlighted through the text, may that be an audio text in the form of a YouTube video or a video from our book, if our book has videos, or part of a film, that also might be the case, or a written text or an audio text from a listening. Because of all this meaningfulness, the words simply etch themselves in the student's memory. The students are asked to work on all 4 skills, and there are receptive skills. What I tell my students at City College is that when you work on integrated skills lessons, try to calibrate how much you ask the students to do in terms of receptive skills. It's usually either reading or listening, and it might be that one of the two comes in the next lesson. You may introduce your topic with a nice juicy video and work on speaking in the pre-listening and then in the post-viewing, so that the students can discuss opinions, answer questions. But at the same time, you may ask the learners to write a comment. I like this idea. Writing comments, you see, we watch a video on YouTube and then we write a comment, how we like this video. Is it real? Is it fake news? Is it something we wanted to watch? Have we found it interesting? That's a very easy writing task of below 100 words. So it can be done in class and it's realistic. We do it all the time. So we cannot do everything. It might not be all 4 skills, but there is a little bit of everything. And I like to think of integrated skills lessons threading themselves like groups of lessons. It might be the 2 first lessons, splitting things. We see that these skills actually function like the engine. The engine has different parts. If the parts of the engine in a car work well, then the car runs. For me, this is how skills work in an integrated skills lesson. I get the chance to see which skills work better than others. For example, my students might exhibit great reading scores in that first lesson, but they might be inhibited to speak. They may produce great language, but the reading scores might be low. They might enjoy the worksheet where they do guided work on vocabulary. They might be more hesitant when they have to work and speak to the other, or even worse, stand up, mingle, ask questions. These are gold. I need that information. I need to get to know my class, and I need to see the dynamics. Who is the class know-it-all? Who is the person who is shy and tries to, find an exit and hide behind the others and never do anything in terms of hard work? Are my tasks too hard? Have I balanced them well for the needs of this class? So as you can see, they're working on the topic, but I'm working on them. And it's like I'm x-raying my class. I wouldn't get that much information if I gave them a test. Let's say this is a 3D image and the test would give me only 1 dimension and only 1 skill. They're grammatical skills. So We've reached the first milestone. I'm going to present 4 activities. I call them activities up your sleeve. I love them. And I love the people who taught me these because obviously there is no first time. Everybody gets inspired from other people. So my first one is called Questions People Ask. I call it this or mini interviews. It depends. Class contract, adapted from an idea by Herbert Kochta. A holiday snap, adapted from an idea by Ken Wilson. And our group flag. Let's get to see them. Questions people ask. The first thing that I do is to get students in groups and I give them a context. The context could be anything. It could be you're in the waiting room of, if they are students at university, for example, you're all interviewees waiting for the interviewer to finish the previous interview, and you want to find out who are the strangers around you. What kind of questions would you ask them? Now, this gives me a golden opportunity because my students usually come up with questions that are not polite in an international context. And I get to teach them some register and I get to see how they understand this context. Also, if I give them, if they are secondary level students, for example, my private language school students, I usually tell them that you're going to meet exchange students or your new classmates, or the person sitting next to you is somebody you don't know. What kind of questions would you ask? In this case, I get to collect questions. As you can see, I don't start by presupposing that the students don't know question forms. I want to see their strength. That's my, let's say, diagnostic part. I'm not teaching questions so far. I want to see what they know. And I've left a broad area of grammar. So they may ask questions in present simple, in present perfect, in past, in all possible structures. And somewhere there will be a grammatical error. And we're going to discuss it as a group and find it out. Also, we're going to work on phonology. How do we deliver questions? Where is the stress of the question? Does my voice go up? Does it rise or does it fall? Then we're going to talk about the style of the questions, the register, and the content of the questions. And then I get the students in groups. Perhaps if I have many groups, I may break them up and then pair them with other students and get them to interview each other. This is very interesting because it breaks the ice between students who are new in the class and students who are old in the class, and also creates a feeling of equality between the learners. It is still a guided task. There are many ways to follow up this task. The first version is for the learners to present their partners. Why? First of all, it gets them to practice third person S in present simple. It also gets them to pay attention to what their partners are saying. They already know themselves, and it builds this group bonding. Then, as they speak, I collect ideas. I write down some notes. Who plays basketball? Who has 3 cats? Who has 3 younger sisters? Whose mom has just given birth to twins? Who went to the United States for summer? You know, all these interesting bits. And then either in the same lesson or in the next lesson, even better, I design a Kahoot and we play Find the Learner Who. Who is the learner who went to the United States? And you can see all the learners, and then they go very fast and find out. Kahoot makes everybody happy. So this is a very easy way. Obviously, you can't create the Kahoot while the students are working, but if I don't have the time, I can just ask the questions from my notebook. Who is the student who's got 3 little sisters? Or who is the student who has twin babies at home? The second version is something I did at summer schools all the time. I admit that there is one thing for which you might need permission and check the GDPR regulations of your school. May I say something? I know this is an international context, but my God, I hate GDPR. It has made our life so difficult, and I cannot see it making it any better. Sorry for this, but I had to say it. So it includes taking photos of the students. I'm not going to ask the students to take photos of each other. I may use my own phone and then download these on the school computer, but all of this has to agree with the GDPR policy of the school. Obviously, this poster doesn't go on Facebook. I will take photos of the learners' backs or their hands as they are working on the poster. So what the poster includes is the students working on a mini summary of what their partner said. So I, as Maria, write the summary about Tina or about Lucina, the person I interviewed. Then the teacher takes a photo of my partner, takes a photo of all of us. And next time, the teacher brings the cutouts of the photos. We put all of these on a nice poster, on a nice cardboard paper. We can write these, we can type these. It depends on how much time you have, how much access to equipment you have. And this means that we can create our own class corner. It's also something that we can, in a way, exhibit and show parents. And it's a way to tell people, hey, we are here. We are the C1 class, Group A for this year. What are the benefits for this from this task? We always keep the question asking for us. We try to be learner-centered, but we ask questions all the time, and half of this time we know the answers. So students don't see what it means to ask meaningful questions and get meaningful answers, and what it means to miss the information and then to ask for clarification or confirmation. So this makes the task realistic. The learners and the teachers can work with fake questions. It's not, and let's say the situation here is that an actual knowledge gap exists. So I'm not asking a question that I already know the answer. I'm asking a question that I really want to find out. The students are interacting with one another, and there is adaptation. There is let's say, the ability to align this task with grammatical structures or with different topics. I'll give you an example. If you do can, you can use this for students to ask what their partners can do. For example, can you play chess? Can you play basketball? Can you play, I don't know, Monopoly? And the answers will be more focused on this area. If we talk about studying habits, the students can ask each other questions only about studying habits. So it's up to the teacher to mold this task in any way available. It might be about healthy eating habits and how we promote healthy eating habits, how each one of us takes care of their healthy diets. This type of exercise works with all levels, all students. I've tried it with EAP students, ESP students, A1 to C2 level students, and I have never seen it not work. It is a language tool because you're actually getting the learners to produce language, but it's also an icebreaker. And really, there is no preparation. If you exclude the idea of the cutting and, sticking to create the poster, which the students will do, we only have to oversee that they're not, cutting their fingers instead of the pieces of paper, safety precautions. And if we exclude the Kahoot preparation, which is not necessary, if you don't want to create a Kahoot, you could play the game in another way. There is zero preparation. And it also helps the learners understand that in this class, we are not going to work with one interaction pattern, teacher in the middle, everybody else, shut up and write down. We're going to talk to our friends. We're going to think of questions in groups of 3. We're going to talk to interview each other. We're going to move from one desk to the next. And this is how we work. So that was my first activity. The second activity is called a class contract, and it is adapted based on an idea by Herbert Puchta. It's actually in his book, Teaching Teenagers. It's an ancient book, but I always go back to it. It's golden, like the ideas that Herbert usually shares. So first of all, we start by discussing rules and regulations. If we have a class which is about B1, it's possible to do the entire thing in English. Perhaps if this is a shy group or their English is not very strong, we might need to include a little bit of L1 so that they can be tuned into the topic. We may ask the learners to give us examples of rules. This will bring in must. You mustn't park on this in front of a door, in front of an exit. Then we can discuss why are they necessary and why is it sometimes difficult to follow rules. Then we can elicit the grammar. What kind of models do we see in rules and regulations? And how are these related with some other semi-modal expressions? Is it the same to say you mustn't write on the wall and you don't have to write in your notebook? What are the differences between these? Then the students get in 4 groups. Now, the groups in which the students get depends on how many groups we have, how many students we have, and how many groups we can create. If there aren't enough students, they may work in pairs. The first group has a topic entitled, What Learners Must Do. The second, What Learners mustn't do. Then what the teacher must do and what the teacher mustn't do. Very clear cut. Must, mustn't. Obligation, prohibition. Once the students do this, they can present their work. How? First of all, we can collect ideas. The easiest way, the most traditional way is for the students to read. We give them a number of ideas, 4, 5, 3, depending on how much time we want to spend on the task. We collect these on the whiteboard and we don't discuss them for the time being. There is another way to do that. If we have access to a good Wi-Fi and the students are good at using their mobile phones, we may create Google Slides. They can enter with their account, we can share them, and they can write their answers on a Google Slide, and then we just project that. This is easier because we don't spend time writing, but this is for a class where there is equipment and where there is access to Wi-Fi. I don't want to overcomplicate things. Let's not forget the book was written in 1995. Nobody thought that there would be internet in classrooms. Then we have an open discussion as a whole group about which ideas we can accept. For example, the students may say, the teacher mustn't give us any homework. The whole year, the teacher mustn't give us any homework? Doesn't sound fair. But this is a good idea because it gets the students and the teacher to exchange ideas on why we need homework. Why do I give you homework? Am I a bad person? Am I evil? Do I do it to torture you? And perhaps the students change the phrasing. The teacher mustn't give homework after a test or after a semester test, or the students must give students more homework for the weekend, less homework from one weekday to the other. And we teach students to edit. It's an indirect way to teach them how to soften their expression. We have a secretary, not the school secretary, another secretary who writes down what the class has accepted. And when we have the finalized version, we read it. And if we have access to a computer, we can type it right there and then. Each group can type their own. They can take turns, or the teacher can do it. And then we have the signed product. The students and the teachers sign it, and each student gets a copy. We can even put it on the notice board of the classroom. Now, what can we do as a follow-up? We can revise the conditionals. We use the 0 and the first. And then we may ask the students to think of consequences. Now, this is a very realistic context. If a student speaks in class while another student is speaking, what will happen? If a student speaks while we are studying, the teacher will give a warning. So this shows the context in which we use the first conditional to express consequences or possible outcomes. These can be added to the contract if we want, and we can create codicils so the students can understand that not everything is black and white. I've already mentioned the benefits. This task is realistic. It gives the perfect situational context for students to revise models for prohibition, lack of obligation, and obligation. It gets the learners to see how grammar is used to talk about real things in real life. It works like a charm in multilingual classes where the students cannot talk to each other. And it also creates a feeling of mutual understanding between the teachers and the learners. We get the learners to understand their obligations. Why does the teacher ask you not to speak when she's presenting something? And we can explain to students that we always take into consideration our teacher talking time, that we try to keep our presentations short, but during that time you need to listen and perhaps take notes. So it's a very realistic task. The next activity I'm going to present is better for young learners, and it's also one of these tasks that require a little bit of crafts. If you like crafts, I like glue, I like messiness, I like sparkle, and I like, crafts in my classroom. I told you I started by teaching very young learners. So first of all, we present different types of flags. As you can see, this is a great idea if we teach in an environment when there might be students from different countries. Now, this is not such an unfamiliar situation, even in countries where everybody used to be white and Christian, Catholic or Orthodox, as in our two lovely countries. Things are changing. So we can present different flags. I will say boldly that even I am not good with flags. What we can do is give students certain countries and certain flags and ask them to surf the internet and see which flag matches which country, and then the different groups can discuss them. Personally, I know that I would recognize all the flags there are around. So we need to make this a bit more manageable. Then the class discusses their own country's flag. The Greek flag has a long history. I suppose the Polish has the Polish eagle on it. The red is meaningful, the white is meaningful, everything is meaningful. But do our students know the meaningfulness behind this? Why are there stripes on the Greek flag? Why is it blue and light blue and white? Why is there a cross on it? So all of these things might become issues to discuss. And then we can ask the students to see how the symbols work. Then the students are put in groups of 3 or 4. The smaller the group, the better in this case. And we give them a cardboard. It could be an A3, it could be an A4. It depends on the students, the classroom. In this case, I prefer something small. We give them all the material they want. We might give them stickers. We might give them stamps, glue, colored paper. This has a little bit of scrapbooking background. That used to be my favorite activity before I adopted a puppy and couldn't do anything related with crafts. But it's got a lot of this. The students have to get to know each other to create their group flag. So in order for them to see what will go onto their flag, they need to understand who they are. So which things do we have in common? What are the things that make us passionate? Are we going to create a symbol based on the initials of our name? And if we have a group of students consisting of a Maria, a Marina, and a Martina, perhaps they're going to call themselves the 3 M's. And perhaps they will think of 3 adjectives that contain M, and they will find amazing, magnificent, marvelous. So we are the 3 M's, and then this boosts their confidence. And as you can see, language comes into it, but once again, it's incidental. What do we like as people? What is our motto? What are we going to use as the emblem of our group? And as you can see, we have many sub-questions. So this is an exciting activity to do, but in contrast to others, it requires more preparation. It requires a little bit of spending on materials. Obviously, the materials are supplied by the school somehow, but it has to be discussed. Then the follow-up. The best way to present their work is for them to stand up, explain the rationale, and then exhibit their posters and perhaps have their photo taken in front of the flag so that we know what each group has presented. They could also write something, as I said, integrated skills. They could go away and as homework, they could write why they chose this as their group flag. This group flag could follow them through the school year, and it could be the first activity that goes into their portfolio. The final activity benefits. Where am I going? If you have a class that enjoys cutting and gluing and doing stuff with their hands as much as with their minds, this is the perfect task. It promotes group bonding, the formation of group identity, and crafts. So it works well with students who might not be linguistically so advanced. It helps the learners find common points and bridge their differences. It works extensively and intensively on speaking skills, and it can include some, but not too much writing. The students' finished program is creative, and I know that some of you might think, the moment I move away, my students will start speaking in Polish. So be it. So be it. We are not in the 1980s. We're in this blessed era, the 21st century, where there is room for everything. There is room for L1 in the classroom as well. It's not a crime. Of course, they are Polish, they will speak in Polish. They are Greek, they will speak in Greek. So be it. I cannot do anything. I spent years trying to make my Russian students speak in English. And because there were always too many Russian students in summer schools, I used to strain my A1 Polish to try to understand C2 Russian and understand what they were talking about. But obviously, this is not my point. My point is, can they present their work in English when the time comes? If I make it too much of a chase, if I make it too much of a police thing, are you speaking English? I will stop this activity if you don't speak in English, then I ruin the fun. So, a summer snap. This is based on an activity that Ken Wilson presented at TESOL Macedonia, Thrace, Northern Greece, I think in 2016, if I'm not mistaken. He did it in a very matter-of-fact way. In fact, he said, who has their mobile phone? And of course, everybody had, because we're taking photos and notes. And he said, choose one of your photos and just tell us about this photo. And it was an instant hit because everybody has photos. Everybody has a photo they love. Everybody has something to say. Now, in our case, since this is a class activity, we have to think of let's say, making this more mainstream. For example, students may not be allowed to have mobile phones. They may not have photos on their mobile phones. They may have deleted them. I don't believe that, but we have to ask. So if we want to do this activity, we have to ask the learners to come with one photo that they took last summer, which they are really fond of and which shows it accurately reflects their summer. First, they're given some thinking time to prepare their own short description of this photo. Then they need to talk about what this photo focuses on, and they need to mention specific things. If this reminds you of anything, there are many oral exams in which the students are given specific bullet points about what to talk. In IELTS, we see this. In Cambridge exams, of course, the bullet points are not the important thing, the question is, but it gets them to think. So you have your photo, whatever that might be. I want you to focus around these questions. Where was the photo taken? who is in it, or what can we see about it? And then what happened before or after? They can add things, and we can give them sub-questions. For example, how were you feeling when you took this photo? Once a student of mine showed us a photo that was really blurry, but it was really artistic. And we all had to guess, very clever of his, because we had to guess what we were looking at. And then he said that this was a photo he took in a very hasty way. It was unfocused. He took it from the ship as they were leaving the island. And he said, we had such a good time. It's almost my camera is crying that we are leaving. They can talk about emotions. They can ask their classmates to guess if the photo is not very clear. So once again, we see that the students get to explain why this photo is their favorite. Of course, after the thinking time and the preparation of the poster, if you want to shorten class time and you want this activity to be faster, you can ask the learners to do that at home. Personally, I enjoy seeing them choose photos and doing that in class. Then they can prepare the sentences describing the photo. And then as the students, once again, this is like find somebody who, the students present their work and I take notes. Then once they are finished, I read again sentences. So let's say Elias presented a photo that was taken from, and I leave a gap, from the ship. Or took a photo from the ship as they were leaving the island, and they have to provide the name of the students. This is done so that the students focus when the other students are presenting. We can also have a photo contest. Which photo did we like best? And the students cannot vote their own photo. They have to vote for someone else's photo. What are the benefits? It's easy to do. It works on speaking. It incorporates the summer that we don't want to leave behind. It allows learners to talk about the things they do in their lives and to get to know each other. And it can easily be turned into a guided writing task, because as homework, we can allow learners to write their description. So if they work with bullet points, they can now write their description, and they can have a mini project or a mini writing task. So in a way, we have worked on material that is easy to find and easy to create, but that doesn't mean that we haven't worked on material that is relevant to the needs and the language that the students speak. Now, let's say that we want to work, I'm running very fast because I have my last 5 minutes. Let's say that we want to work on material from last year. We need to see which material we want to choose. So for example, I will choose food, and I will get the students to revise the vocabulary, the relevant vocabulary. Apologies, revise the vocabulary, not the students. And first, I would play a variety of flashcard games. My favorite one is the vanishing flashcard. So we revise, let's say, at this point, they know this vocabulary, so I would have even 12 flashcards. I could do that on Quizlet as well. And then I would make one flashcard disappear while the students are not looking. So which word is missing? And then get the students to be the one who decides which one is, whose flashcard is missing, which flashcard is missing. Pass the flashcard is played like pass the parcel. But in this case, when we play pass the parcel, we have one parcel. In this case, we give students one flashcard each. Now, if we have revised 12 words and we have 12 students, we have all the words in the group. If we have 8 students and 12 words, so be it. We have 8 words. One will be out the moment it is said. So music plays, students pass on the card, and then the music stops. Whoever holds a card has to say either what this is. For example, this is a light snack. We can eat it at school. It's got bread. It's got a slice of tomato, a slice of ham, and a slice of cheese. What is it? A sandwich. Or they can say, it depends on the level of the learners. They can say the word. They can spell the word. It depends on what we want them to do. And then we play the music again, and then we stop. Obviously, we have to stop quite often so that the students will get to revise and many students get to speak. We can play bingo, and we can play bingo without giving them the words. So the students have the words on the grids they copy, but we describe them. A fruit which is yellow and we buy in bunches, banana. A summer fruit, it's red, it's sweet. We eat it with feta cheese, watermelon. And the first student that has crossed out all the fruits says bingo. So the next one is word tennis. I love word tennis because if I have a fruit, you have to reply with a fruit. So I say orange and you have to reply apple. And then the next person has to say watermelon and so on and so forth. So as you can see, these activities will not be played, we will not have all of them in one lesson, but a little bit of everything works. Then we have all this vocabulary, all this lexical load. We can get the learners to put the words in categories. This can be done in a very kinesthetic way. We can give them a cardboard paper. We can give them cutouts or small flashcards or, flashcards from books we don't use anymore, and get them to pin them. Instead of writing, they can pin them and then write the words next to them, and they can create the posters with the different vocabulary. Then we can change the task and we can say, okay, let's say that we have a restaurant or a cafe. Let's create the menu. What would we have for the first course, the main course, the desserts, the salads? And then we can decide if the food that is served at that cafe is good for us or bad for us. And we can keep the last one separately as well. We can get them to look at the different food categories and decide if this is good for them or bad for them. This task allows us to revise vocabulary we have done in a very relaxed way. This is very adaptable. We can do, we think that flashcards are only for young learners. I find them so useful when I teach adults, especially adults who have learning difficulties that went undetected while they were students. I find flashcards extremely useful with my teenagers. They love them. Second day at university, my business students came in and I was at the door giving them flashcards and they were looking at me like I was some sort of alien. They loved the game. The revision of vocabulary becomes a way to see how much they remember about the topic. Perhaps the next step is to use a reading text that we didn't use, perhaps one of the test material. The learners will also use their speaking. We can create, so for example, to bridge two things, instead of using the menus, you can get the learners to create questions on the foods they like, how frequently they eat something, how well they take care of their diet. So now you can have mini interviews in that. Now, in order to recycle material from the previous year, we need to choose a text that we have used, but change the task. For example, we can get the learners to read the same task, the same text, but in this time, we change the way they see it. For example, reading is always done on A4 paper. The students are sitting at their desks reading on their own. This time, let's say we have multiple matching tasks. We print them on different A3 sheets, and the students go around. They may not have 10 sentences, they may have only 2. And they go around reading and deciding if their sentences form part of A, B, C, or D. If they know the text, this makes it even better and even more easier. If they don't know the text, that's fine. They can share, they can ask, and we can see how well they read. This is ideal for multiple matching. And then if we want to work on our gapped text, instead of giving them just 1 or 2 sentences to add, we can jumble paragraphs and give them to the students to create the text, or we can take a paragraph, break it into sentences, and ask the students to put it back together. We can ask the learners to write questions based on the text they learn. This is ideal for working with multiple choice texts. Also, we can ask the learners to create a reading quiz for the other group. So this is the text that we are all reading. You have to write 3 questions for the other group to answer. And in this case, the students have to check the accuracy of the question and how well they're formed and the correct language. One of the benefits for this task is that it uses material that hasn't been used or recycled material that has been left unused, or reuses material that was difficult. There is minimal use of photocopies. Instead of making, let's say, 12 photocopies of a text, you make 3, 4 large A3 photocopies, and that's it. You can keep these for next year as well, especially if you laminate them. Students experience reading in a different way. They see that they can share, they can work in groups, they can work in pairs, they can ask for help. They don't necessarily need to know the text, and if they do, that's fine. Speaking is part of the pre-reading text, and then we can ask the students to write a response or a reply to this text. And of course, we can use the same recipes for listening. So if we have a listening text that is really interesting, we can use it again, and this time change the task. Or if there is a yummy listening which we didn't get to do, we can use it in class with our learners now for the first time. Now, some closing thoughts, because it's late already. We need to keep the lessons light. So I would say less is more in this case. I am a believer in homework. I think that homework is the first step to self-directed learning, as long as it is related to the lesson, properly calibrated, not vindictive. I'm not out to punish the students for the free time and the happiness they may have, because I'm an adult and my whole life is filled with worries. Homework is meant to be an itsy-bitsy little thing that comes after the lesson to help the learners keep track of what was done in class. So if they do the flags, I will assign them to write down the rationale of why they did the flag in this way. If we do the snaps, I'm going to ask them to work on describing the photo or describing the photo they liked. I would avoid over-focusing on grammar. Anything tedious, anything related with stress demotivates learner. If grammar has to be revised because that's the rule of a school, I will create an integrated skills lesson that will lead to the grammar phenomena that need to be tested or taught or practiced. My material would be threaded. So we talked about food, we played with the flashcards, then we did some activities that went further with the vocabulary, then they did some let's say ordering activities which have to do with critical thinking skills, and then we played mini interviews, and then we wrote summaries about how each one of us takes care of our diet. It's worth spending time to think of anticipated problems before the first lesson. For me, anticipated problems are the #1 way for me to visualize what might go wrong. And it's not simply timing. It's also things that might be totally unpredictable. So, szczęśliwego roku szkolnego, and see you in January, I think, hopefully. And may we all be there, strong, happy, creative, to produce more. I will post on my blog the write-up for these. It was a bit long, and I don't like blog posts to be long, so I broke it down into 2 parts. My first one will start tomorrow, and then next Thursday I will upload the second part. I will be sharing these on my social media. Thank you so much, and please, I will stop sharing so that you can ask me any questions, anything that you may want to. Thank you for being here, and thank you for staying until so late. Yes, definitely less is more.
Okay, thank you, Maria. It's as usual, it has been so dense and it's so good that we are recording it. I am now going to stop the recording. Yes,